Today's Gospel, the story of the raising of Lazarus in John chapter 11, is, apart from the Passion Gospels on Palm Sunday, the longest Gospel reading in the 3 years of our lectionary. In the present circumstances in which we cannot meet together for worship, at least you don't have to stand for the 7.5 minutes it would have taken me to read it. It's the culmination of the first half of the Gospel, the last and greatest of the 7 miracles narrated by John, though John never calls them miracles but signs that don't simply portray Jesus as a miracle worker, but point to the deeper meaning below the surface. That deeper meaning is there in verse 4, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. And though there are still a couple more to come in the following chapters, it's also the culmination of the 7 I am sayings of Jesus. I am the bread of life, the light of the world, the door, the good shepherd, and now the resurrection and the life. But it's also the launch pad for the second half of the Gospel. It's the trigger for the Jewish authorities to take action against Jesus. It's the final straw that breaks the camel's back as far as they're concerned, and it leads inexorably into the Gospel's passion narrative. Yet even more than in the other Gospels, it's not the passion narrative that is the climax of John's Gospel, but the resurrection. Mark's Gospel is sometimes described as a passion narrative with an extended introduction. Without denying the importance of the cross in John, I like to think of John's Gospel as a resurrection narrative with an extended introduction. And the raising of Lazarus at this pivotal moment in the Gospel points forward to the resurrection of Jesus. It provides a graphic illustration of one of the great themes of John's Gospel in his opening verses, "In him was life." You cannot read today's Gospel and then read John's resurrection narrative in chapter 20 without being struck by the similarities in wording. Rise again, weep, where have you laid him? Take away the stone, the cloth and the napkin around his head, all exact words or phrases that recur in chapter 20. Of course, the raising of Lazarus is not the same as the resurrection of Jesus. Lazarus would in due course die again and not return to this life. But these similarities in wording are enough to suggest that John sees this story as in some sense symbolizing that greater rising to new life that would be the climax of his whole gospel, not just of Jesus himself, but for John's readers and for us who hear him 2 millennia later, of all who believe and have passed from death to life in him. The raising of Lazarus might seem a surprising choice of gospel for today, Passion Sunday, as we head into the 2 most solemn, desolate weeks of the Christian year. But it is in fact very suitable as we stand at this pivotal moment in the season of Lent. At the time, the bemused and confused disciples could see only the looming disaster and say with Thomas, "Let us go also, that we may die with him." But John's Gospel looks forward not just to Jesus' passion and death, but beyond that to his resurrection and ascension, already foreshadowed in the raising of Lazarus. We find ourselves today at a similar pivotal moment for the Church, our nation, and the world. Bemused and confused, we find it difficult to see beyond the looming disaster. Much as in another time of great national crisis, the people of Judah and Jerusalem, desolate and carted off into exile in Babylon, could only say, "How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land?" In today's Old Testament reading, Ezekiel, prophesying to those exiles, sees his great vision of the valley of the dry bones, immortalized in the spiritual "dem bones, dem bones, dem dry bones," and discovers the surprising answer to God's question, can these bones live, is yes. Yes, there was hope for the hopeless and the prospect of new life for those who thought of themselves as good as dead. So too for us there is hope. Hope of new life beyond the immediate difficulties of singing the Lord's song, exiled from our church building. Hope of new life foreshadowed in the raising of Lazarus. Had we been in church, I would have chosen for our final hymn Sidney Carter's Lord of the Dance. I danced on a Friday when the world turned black. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. They buried my body and they thought I'd gone. But it continues, but I am the dance and I still go on. They cut me down and I leapt up high. I am the life that will never, never die. I'll live in you if you'll live in me. And I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. Alleluia to that, even on Passion Sunday.